This summer I'll be through hiking the Tahoe Rim Trail, and in this video I'm going to cover my travel plans, where I'll be starting and ending my hike, my resupply, and a few other things. The Tahoe Rim Trail is an approximately 175-mile loop trail that goes around the Tahoe Basin. Because the trail is a loop, it's different than any other through hike that I've done before. The biggest difference is that there's no official starting or ending point. So you can choose where you start your hike, and once you return to that point after completing the loop, that'll be your ending point. This means you can also strategize your resupply points to whatever works best for you. I think the two most popular spots for both starting and resupplying are Tahoe City and the South Lake Tahoe area. There are a few other options, but they don't offer quite the services that these two do. Most notably for me is the public transportation going to and from the airport. Because if you're flying, you'll probably be flying in and out of the Reno-Tahoe airport regardless of where you start and finish your hike. Both Tahoe City and South Lake Tahoe have relatively easy and inexpensive travel options to and from the airport, so they both make the most sense for me as a starting and ending point. Both options also have lodging, transportation, and restaurants. They're also about equidistant on the trail, so whichever one I didn't start at, the other would be my resupply option. I decided that I'm going to start out of South Lake Tahoe, and here's why. There's a bus service that runs directly from the Reno airport to South Lake Tahoe called the South Tahoe Airporter. This bus runs all day long, so there are a variety of options as far as timing. My flight will be arriving late in Reno, so I'm going to spend the night there. Then in the morning, I'm going to take the bus to South Lake Tahoe before starting my hike. There's an outdoor store in town called Tahoe Sports Limited where I'm going to pick up a fuel canister. And then I'm going to walk up to the Van Sickle Bi-State Park, and there are trails there that connect right to the Tahoe Rim Trail, so that's how I'm going to be starting my hike. The next reason I chose South Lake Tahoe is that there is a hostel called the Mellow Mountain Hostel, and it makes for an inexpensive night where I can stay and get cleaned up after I finish my hike. The following day, the way flights worked out, I'll have an entire day in South Lake Tahoe before getting on the bus in the afternoon and to the airport. So for me, this made for the simplest way of getting to and from the airport and to and from the Tahoe Rim Trail. Since I'm starting in South Lake Tahoe, I'll be resupplying in Tahoe City. They have a couple different resupply options as well as a few restaurants to choose from. I think the most popular resupply options would be the Post Office or Alpenglow Sports, who accepts resupply packages, but you should contact them first. There's also the option of just resupplying at one of the grocery stores in town. And then after you resupply, you could potentially spend the night there at a hotel, or there's a campground. It typically does fill up pretty quick, so you'd probably need to book that ahead of time. I'm still undecided if I'll be spending the night during my resupply. If I do spend the night, it'll be at the campground. There are a few sites still available. The campground is right next to the post office, a supermarket, and a few restaurants, so it's really tempting. That would make for a much better resupply than just kind of doing a resupply midday and then getting back on trail. So I'm just going to see how the miles go getting there. I'm not going to push it to start, so I'm just going to see how things go as I'm hiking. As I mentioned, Tahoe City has a lot of similar options that South Lake Tahoe does, and I think it's actually the most popular starting point for the Tahoe Rim Trail. Most people go clockwise. One of the clear advantages to it is that it's essentially right on trail. I think another reason that it's so popular actually has more to do with the trail itself. One of, if not the most beautiful part of the entire trail is in the Desolation Wilderness. This is on the west side of the lake, and from what I understand, it's your quintessential Sierra, with alpine lakes and rivers and passes. So many people like to start out in Tahoe City, go clockwise, and that has them finishing their hike in Desolation Wilderness. If I were going this way, I would resupply in South Kingsbury, which is where I'll actually be starting. Because there's a market there just a short ways off trail that accepts resupply packages, and there's also a restaurant right next door, so pretty much everything you would need for a quick and fulfilling resupply. The east side of the lake does have some obstacles that the west side doesn't, the biggest one being lack of water. It can be several miles of not passing a single water source, so that can often mean much bigger mileage days because you need to make it to a water source. Another challenge is that there's a no camping area for about 16 miles outside of a few designated campgrounds within that 16 miles. So in other words, there's a 16-mile section with no dispersed camping. Because of all this, it actually makes for another reason I want to start in South Lake Tahoe, and I will be going clockwise. I'd prefer to do the higher mileage days later into my trip. That's when I'll be fully in the game, both mentally and physically. In the beginning, I'll do slightly shorter days where I can take my time and adjust. Plus, going this way, the first few nights, there are actually some really ideally spaced out campsites on Star Lake and then Round Lake. It makes for a perfect way to start my trip. Then I'm planning on taking my time through Desolation Wilderness so I can really enjoy it. And then the highest point of the trail, Relay Peak, is on the north side of the lake. So I'll be around 3/4 of the way done with my entire hike and be fully acclimated before I get there. Plus, finishing on the east side of the lake does have its advantages. That's where some of the best views of Lake Tahoe can be had, and for me, finishing a hike with views of the trail's namesake seems like a great way to finish. So easing into the hike will be the best way for me to start, and then once I'm in it, I think it will be easier to get higher mileage days both between water sources and campsites, while also getting those full Lake Tahoe views. So I'm planning on hiking this trail in about 10 days. I have a little cushion at the end, so if I were to finish a little earlier and a little late, it shouldn't be an issue. I understand that this trail is really well graded and maintained, so I don't think an average of around 17 miles a day should be an issue. I think it should be a good amount of daily mileage where I'm still able to really fully enjoy the trail. This year, 2023, has been a historic snow year, so it's possible that I'll be doing some hiking over snow. But the good side of that is that most water sources should still be running. As far as the permit process, this is much different than my previous experiences in Yosemite and the John Muir Trail. The only area that you actually need a permit is for Desolation Wilderness. From what I understand, if you get a Tahoe Rim Trail thru-hiker permit, that permit covers your travel through this section. So for this trail, there's a ranger station that you call a few weeks before you start your hike to get your permit, and there is no online process like the other trails I mentioned. There's information on the Tahoe Rim Trail website just on how to go about doing this. But I will say that for me it does make me a little bit nervous that my trip's starting in about a month. I have everything booked, but I don't have an official permit yet. So I'll be calling them in about a week or so, and if worst comes to worst, I just have to hike through the Desolation Wilderness in one day without camping. But I really hope that doesn't happen since I'm really looking forward to that area. Another permit that's needed is a California fire permit. This isn't for campfires because campfires aren't allowed on the Tahoe Rim Trail, but it's actually for your stove use if you plan on cooking. So you need to get one of these California fire permits to use your stove in the backcountry. But it's a free permit. You just go onto a website, take a quick course, and print off your permit. Alright, well that's going to do it for this video. I'm going to do another video coming up here of all the gear that I'm bringing out on trail. And I might do a couple other videos before the trip as well. Let me know if there's anything that you are interested in about in this hike. I'll also be doing some daily videos of my hike on the Tahoe Rim Trail. So please subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you out on the trail.